Hello, this is the 6th video in my series on self-care, and we are talking today about the importance and the impact that social connection makes on us in our grief process and the moving through the grief, on the grief journey, and learning to being able to heal and become okay eventually in the midst of the pain of the loss of our loved one or other losses that have been very painful for us. So please go back and watch the intro and the other videos on the other areas, which are emotional self-care, the need for that, the physical self-care, the spiritual, and the mental. And again, today is on our interactions with people, needing people in our lives as part of our grief. So please, if you have liked other videos that you've watched of mine, the content has been helpful to you, you've benefited from that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much. When you like a video, which I need to remind myself to do too, it helps that video to go out and help other people. And so many people are hurting and grieving. So that's part of my mission for this channel. So basically, we cannot do grief alone. All the experts agree that being alone or isolated in our grief is not healthy. It does not help us heal. It does not keep us going forward. Then we aren't validated and comforted and accepted. We need acceptance. We need comfort. We need support in general. We need to feel connected in our grief. We need to be able to talk about our loss, whether it's bereavement, the loss of a loved one, or other types of losses. We need to be able to talk about it. And while I'm totally for journaling, and journaling has its own very good points about it, it's there pretty much very easily you can have it. It's cheap. And you're not relying on other people, and it's very safe. And yet talking about it does a whole different thing. So it's so important that we are connected, that we're understood, we're validated, that we're not alone, that we realize we're not the only ones going through what we're going through, that when we feel crazy or we wonder, why am I doing this? Why am I so tired? It seems like I'm lazy. No, you're not lazy. You're grieving, and you have a huge burden on you, and it makes you more tired. So when you're around people, it helps you to know that you're not the only one going through this and experiencing what you're feeling. So it just helps in so many ways to help you along your grief journey. Being alone and having time alone, there's certain self-care practices that you need to have that time alone in. Like journaling, like prayer, although prayer can also be great with a group, and my church is all about that. So, there are certain things we need to do to be alone, just to process things, but there are certain things we need to do in the presence of people who understand. And by the way, it does not have to be the exact same loss as you. I've noticed this by having the support group that we've been leading at our church for the last 2.5 years at CCWC, Calvary Chapel Worship Center. I've noticed that just grief brings people together that normally would have never met. It validates you with understanding. Maybe one person doesn't understand as much, but you're going to find somebody in a support group, or if you're around enough people socially, you'll find people who are also grieving, because it's a very common thing that we all go through, and many are going through it. Maybe they haven't told you that, but if you start opening up about yours, you may give them permission to talk about their grief, and then you realize that they do understand. Whether it's the loss of a spouse or a child or a close friend or a sibling or whoever it would be. If it matters to you and that was a life-changing loss, you need to process that loss. You need to mourn that loss. And just to go over briefly, in case you don't know, grief in general is all that you experience on the inside of you when you go through a loss, a life-changing loss. that you personally are realizing you're going through. Mourning is any kind of expression or talking or honoring that person or anything that comes on the outside of you. That's called, now it becomes mourning. And the Bible says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So I believe that right there validates and confirms that God knows the importance of being around other people and talking and expressing and honoring and working through that grief with other people, because again, that's what mourning is. Now, you could do a step of mourning all by yourself and just light a candle in honor of your loved one and nobody else is around. But typically when we mourn, we get together, we have a memorial or a funeral or a celebration of life, whichever one you want to call it or you want to designate it as. We are doing another beautiful candlelight ceremony this Christmas again, like we did last year at Calvary Temple Worship Center. It's going to be on December 13th. We'll be talking more about that as we go. So usually we get together with somebody, and I encourage that because that's more going to validate and confirm and make you know that you can talk about your loved one when maybe your friends and family you cannot do that with. And that is normal, to either not have much support or to think you're going to have support with a friend or family member and then you don't. Some of that drops off. It's very normal. It's sad. It's probably hurtful to you, but it's very normal. So the whole idea is to go and build other relationships, new relationships. And you can do that by attending a support group. You can do that by maybe volunteering somewhere in a way that you like, or helping others, or just going to church services more. But it takes more so getting involved. You know, maybe your job, you already have plenty of people you can do that with. But usually we need to do something outside of our family and our job a lot of times. So support groups are really good with that. So I want to encourage that. I'm not going to talk a real long time about that on this video, but it is a huge way to be validated as long as it's a safe support group and it's a healthy one. If it's not, then go check out a different one, or maybe that one doesn't fit for you and another one will. Don't be afraid to do that. Hospice has groups. I'm not going to mention all of them right now. I don't even know all of them. There's online groups. There's sometimes specialized grief groups, like for parents who've lost a child, or parents who've lost someone, or anybody who lost someone to a substance or an overdose, or what have you. Okay? So, but go and find one and try it and give it at least a few weeks, because that can be very beneficial and you can find new friends. I've shared this before in a couple other videos, but a group of different widows and one who lost her sister that was almost like losing a spouse. They all started our group at different times. She was there ever since the first night and almost barely never missed. And they all ended up becoming friends and kind of graduating together. And they serve at our church together. They have fun together. They, help each other through problems. And so you just never know that you might not make another friend, or maybe even a group of friends through a support group. So I just want to mention that, and just, when we're feeling crazy, we need to know we're not crazy. And there's so many other things like that. And all of that I mentioned, with feeling connected, understood, validated, accepted, supported, comforted, all of that happens around people, right? Because when we're alone, sometimes we overthink things and we don't have that feedback for somebody to say, no, that's a lie, or that's not true, or don't beat yourself up over that. That's normal. It's understandable. You're going to get through this. We need that for hope and for help and for coping. And we learn from one another. So there's so many things. So that's what today was about, how we really do need community and social interaction, time with a friend to work through our grief. If you have it with your spouse, great. But I know somebody who absolutely is probably never going to have it with her spouse, even though she's married. And so that's where it's important to find a group or a coach or counselor or a therapist or somebody to help you through it, Don't be afraid to do so. It's totally normal. It's totally healthy. You're going to be so happy you did it because you're going to work through your grief way faster than if you don't. So that's what today is really about. Social self-care, as I call it. And I wanted to read just a little bit from this is kind of like the Gary Rowe book, Grief Walk, that we read in our group. We read one of these each week in accordance with our topic, kind of pick something that goes with our topic. This is a similar book by Alan Wolfelt, 365 Days of Understanding Your Grief. And I just wanted to read one out of that about kind of targeting loneliness. But he says, loneliness and grief is common. Mourners often self-isolate, and friends, unsure of how to respond, fall away. Just like I just said, it's very common. The loss of essential relationships makes loneliness even worse, definitely, whether that's a good friend or whoever it is. Some temporary loneliness and grief is normal, but profound and ongoing loneliness is harmful. Studies have shown that lonely people are more likely to get sick, suffer cognitive decline, and die sooner. Yeah, that was an eye-opener to me. Loneliness also triggers chronic inflammation, which heightens the risk of heart disease, stroke, and cancer. If I'm feeling lonely, I know it's time to seek out connection. I will reach out to friends, family members, and colleagues and neighbors and acquaintances. And support groups. So I just wanted to read that. He is probably one of the top world-renowned grief experts, and Gary Rowe is another one. I have a friend that's being trained by him. It was neat because I think she shared about our group with him and was telling details about it, and he sounded very interested in it, and it sounded very confirming that our group was on a good track. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I am not actually going to be leading our group at CCWC for the end of this year. We are rotating different leaders. This way me and my husband have a break, and I can focus more in on my coaching and one-on-one. So I'm always here for one-on-one if you need to talk, or you would like to do my complimentary consult that is completely free for a whole hour. And most people tell me I should not do an hour, and I do, because I know how it is, especially with grief. We need time to really see if we can connect with the person, and for the coach or the counselor to really know, can I help you, or do I need to refer you out? So I do that with no obligation to go further. So let me know if you are interested in that. I will add the link will be in this description of this video. And I'm so glad you joined me today. If you got value from this video and you know a friend who needs this video, who might be isolating or just overwhelmed with their grief, and they don't really have that understanding of how important it is for them to work through it, please share this video and give them permission to grieve. Give them permission to grieve and get help in their grief. Okay? So I'm Julie K, helping you find your way through grief and loss. And I'll see you next week. Next week will be kind of our conclusion of this series on self-care. And I'm going to share more on different symptoms we have and probably what kind of self-care you need, just to kind of refer back to the 5 areas I've been going over. So thank you. God bless you. God bless you, and see you next week. Bye-bye.